In the year 2150, humanity had achieved incredible advancements in technology, but it had also created a dark side. The strong ruled over the weak and experiments were common, especially in the secret laboratories of the Galactic Alliance. Among these experiments was a young girl named Lyra. Lyra had bright blue eyes and wild, curly hair. She lived in a world filled with strange creatures and terrifying monsters. But Lyra was not just any girl, she had a unique gift. She could communicate with these creatures, understand their thoughts, and even influence their behavior. This made her a target for the Galactic Alliance, who saw her as a powerful asset or a dangerous threat. One day, Lyra was captured by scientists who worked for the Alliance. They locked her in a cold metal cage in a dark chamber, surrounded by the very monsters she was said to control. The room smelled of metal and fear, and shadows lurked in every corner. The scientists were curious about what would happen if they placed Lyra in a cage with the most fearsome creatures they could find, a group of vicious alien beasts known as gorgers. These creatures had sharp teeth, thick skin, and could sense fear from a mile away. The scientists watched through a thick glass window, giggling and jeering as they anticipated chaos. They believed that the gorgers would soon end Lyra's life, proving that humans were indeed the strongest beings in the universe. The gorgers growled and snarled, their yellow eyes glowing in the dim light. They paced around the cage, waiting for their chance to pounce. However, Lyra sat quietly in the center of the cage. Instead of fear, she felt curiosity. She had learned to stay calm when faced with danger, and now, she decided to try something new. Slowly, Lyra extended her hand through the bars of the cage. "I know you are angry and hungry," she said softly. "But we don't have to fight. We can work together. I can help you." The gorgers paused, their eyes narrowing, trying to decipher the strange human girl. In the wild, they had never met a human who spoke to them like this. Lyra focused her mind, reaching out to connect with the creatures. Moments later, she felt their thoughts: confusion, rage, and a desire for freedom. Dirac, the largest of the gorgers, stepped forward. He was muscular, with scars crisscrossing his face. "Why should we trust you, little human?" he growled. "You have been locked away for too long. I can feel your pain." "You want to be free," Lyra replied, her voice steady. "I can help you escape." As the gorgers listened, their growls softened. Lyra had discovered their fears, not just about the humans who had captured them, but about their own imprisonment. The gorgers began to see her not as prey, but as a possible ally. Meanwhile, the scientists were growing restless. They did not expect Lyra to communicate with the monsters. After several tense moments, they decided to increase the pressure by activating the cage's electric shocks. The scientists watched eagerly, thinking they would soon witness a display of terror. But Lyra was unfazed. She focused harder on the gorgers. "Now is our chance," she whispered. "When the electric shocks come, you must work together. Use your strength to break down these bars." As the first crack of electricity surged through the cage, Lyra winced slightly but remained composed. The gorgers roared in fury, more furious than they had ever been, and an unexpected transformation took place. They charged the walls of the cage in unison, roaring with raw anger and force. The scientists cheered, believing that the gorgers would turn on Lyra. But the air changed. Instead of fighting her, the gorgers were working with her. With one mighty push from Dirac and the others, the metal bars groaned and then splintered apart. The cage collapsed, and dust filled the air. The scientists were shocked. "What are you doing? Get back!" one shouted, panic in his eyes. But it was too late. The gorgers surged out of their cage, ready for freedom. Lyra stood tall among them. In a flash, the gorgers lunged at the scientists. Chaos erupted. Lyra felt the thrill of power as she stood alongside the beasts she had once been afraid of. "Stop! "We are not here to kill, but to escape," she shouted. The creatures halted at her command, surrounding her like a protective wall. Lyra turned to the scientists. "You thought you could cage us? You do not understand who the real monsters are." In that moment, the room echoed with shouts and the panic of the scientists. Lyra felt a wave of determination overcome her. "Today, we reclaim our freedom," she declared. Taking charge, Lyra guided the Gorgers toward an exit leading to the outside. Fearful of her power, the scientists scrambled away, desperately trying to save themselves. Lyra and the Gorgers burst through the doors and into the open sun. Once outside, the Gorgers let out a chorus of triumphant roars. They were unstoppable, now, guided by Lyra's courage and command. The group of monsters and their unexpected leader walked into a world that was vast and open. As they ventured into the wilderness, Lyra realized that she had not just escaped, she had transformed into something powerful and brave. No longer seen as a mere girl, she was now respected as a leader, a force to be reckoned with among monsters and humans alike. And so, Lyra and the Gorgers formed a bond. They traveled together, challenging the injustices of the world, proving that sometimes, the scariest ones are those who have learned to stand up against fear itself. They were no longer mere victims, they had become a family of fighters ready to take on whatever came next. The world would remember Lyra not just as a girl who was locked in a cage but as the girl who led a revolution alongside monsters. The spaceship shuddered, a low groan echoing through its metallic corridors. Illyra, a young woman with eyes like chipped amethyst and hair the color of a stormy sea, found herself staring into the cold, uncaring face of a Kryll. These creatures, bipedal horrors with chitinous armor and razor-sharp claws, were the bane of the Galactic Federation. They were feared, loathed, and now, Illyra was caged with 3 of them. Her crime? Defiance. Refusal to comply with the Federation's draconian new laws regarding the exploration of uncharted space. Illyra, a cartographer with an unmatched sense of direction and an even greater sense of independence, had always chafed under the Federation's control. She believed in exploration, in pushing the boundaries, in discovering new worlds, not stifling them with regulations. Her punishment? A slow, agonizing death at the claws of Krylls. The cage was small, barely enough room for her to turn around. The Krylls, their multifaceted eyes glinting with malevolent intelligence, circled her, sniffing the air. Their chittering was a constant, unsettling chorus. One of them, larger than the others, stepped forward, a claw clicking against the cage floor. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at Illyra, but it was quickly replaced by a chilling calm. She had studied the Krylls extensively. Not just their physical attributes, but their behavior, their communication, their weaknesses. The Federation had dismissed her research, deeming it useless, preferring brute force over understanding. But Illyra had seen patterns, discovered vulnerabilities. She knew more about these creatures than any scientist in the Federation. The large Kryll lunged, claws extended. Illyra reacted instinctively, sidestepping with surprising agility. The claw missed her by inches. The other 2 Krylls joined the attack, but Illyra, anticipating their moves, dodged and weaved, her movements precise and deadly. She wasn't fighting back with brute strength, she was using her knowledge. She knew Krylls were highly territorial. She knew their communication relied on a complex system of pheromones and subtle movements. She even knew their dietary preferences, understanding that a Kryll's aggression could be temporarily subdued by releasing specific scent compounds from certain plants. Fortunately, she had managed to smuggle a few rare samples with her. She found a small crack in the cage wall, a result of the ship's recent shudder. With nimble fingers, she widened the crack, releasing one of the plant samples. The strong, earthy scent immediately permeated the air. The Krylls paused their attack, their chitinous bodies twitching. Their multifaceted eyes, which had been burning with rage and predatory hunger, now seemed confused. The scent was powerful, influencing their primal instincts. Illyra saw an opportunity. As the Krylls were distracted, she pressed the crack further, making it wide enough to fit her small frame through. She escaped the cage, landing silently on the cold metallic floor of the holding cell. The three Krylls, still disoriented by the scent, turned their attention to each other, their hissing sounds escalating into a chaotic squabble over territory. Illyra moved swiftly, using her knowledge of the ship's layout, which she had memorized from the blueprints she had surreptitiously studied. Her plan was simple: to cause a diversion, to create chaos, and then to escape. She reached the ship's main control panel, her heart pounding against her ribs. It wasn't easy, but she bypassed the security systems with ease. Her expertise in cartography was far more than just map making, it extended to complex systems of code and data. It had always been her secret weapon, a skill she honed for the day she might need to escape the iron grip of the Federation. With a few swift keystrokes, she triggered a ship-wide alert, broadcasting a false distress signal that spoke of a Kryll outbreak. The alarm sirens blared through the ship, sending the Federation guards scrambling. The Krylls, caught in a moment of territorial conflict, became unwitting accomplices to her escape. The chaos was deafening, the lights flickering erratically. Illyra, using the confusion to her advantage, made her way to an escape pod. She launched it, leaving the pandemonium of the ship behind. As she hurtled through space, the cold vastness of the cosmos surrounding her, she looked back at the distant, flickering lights of her prison. Her defiance wasn't just about breaking the rules, it was about proving a point. She had been thrown into a cage with monsters, creatures feared by the entire galaxy. Yet, it was her knowledge, her understanding, her intelligence that had turned the tables. They had underestimated her. They had underestimated the power of knowledge and the human spirit. The Federation would soon learn that locking Illyra in a cage with monsters had unleashed a much scarier predator. Illyra, the cartographer, was free, and her journey of exploration, far from over, had just begun. She would continue to chart new territories, not only on maps, but in the very fabric of the galaxy itself. Her escape was a testament to her spirit, a warning to those who dared to cage the wild, untamed heart of an explorer. In a distant future, on a planet called Varanthia, humanity had expanded into the cosmos. Colonies sprouted on several planets, each one with its own set of rules and ways of life. Some planets were peaceful, while others were infused with danger and chaos. Varanthia was known for its wild terrain and fierce creatures that roamed the land. In the heart of this planet, an ancient arena thrived, where humans and monstrous beings competed for glory. Lila was a young woman known for her striking silver hair and bright green eyes. She lived in the outskirts of a small colony, working as a mechanic. Although she seemed ordinary, there was something extraordinary about her. She had a special connection to machines and could fix just about anything. However, Lila had a secret that set her apart. She had been trained in a combat style that combined agility and intelligence, allowing her to overcome larger opponents. One fateful day, Lila received a letter that would change everything. The letter invited her to compete in the Grand Arena, which pitted humans against monstrous competitors. Nervous but intrigued, she decided to accept the challenge, hoping to prove her worth. Upon arriving at the Grand Arena, she was amazed by the size and grandeur of the place. Large screens displayed the upcoming battles, and the crowd buzzed with excitement. Lila quickly learned that she would be fighting in a cage filled with monsters. The thought sent chills down her spine, but she steeled herself. She knew she needed to keep her wits about her. As she waited for her turn, she met other competitors. Some were strong and muscular, while others were clever and quick. Yet, everyone seemed apprehensive about the monsters they would face. The announcer's voice boomed through the arena, reverberating in the hearts of the fighters. One by one, competitors were called to fight. Lila watched each match, seeing how competitors confronted terrifying creatures. Some fighters used brute strength, while others showed remarkable cunning. However, as the battles continued, it became clear that many of the fighters lacked true understanding of their opponents. Finally, it was Lila's turn. She stepped into the cage, which was dark and damp. The crowd cheered, and Lila felt exhilarated. Then the gate slammed shut behind her, and she took a deep breath, calming herself. The lights flickered, and suddenly, the cage opened up, revealing the first monster. It was a hulking beast with sharp claws and glowing eyes. With her heart racing, Lila slipped into a defensive stance. The monster roared and charged at her. Instead of panicking, inspired by the fighters who came before her, she used her training wisely. She dodged the beast's massive claws, her movements quick and fluid. Timing her strikes perfectly, Lila found openings and hit the monster where it counted. To everyone's surprise, she quickly subdued the creature. The crowd erupted into roars of approval, and Lila felt a wave of confidence wash over her. Yet, Lila knew this was just the beginning. More monsters would come, and she had to keep fighting. As the battles continued, Lila faced various monsters, each one more terrifying than the last. She fought a creature that could blend into the shadows and another that breathed fire. With each victory, she grew stronger and gained more respect from the audience. However, deep down, she felt that something was still not right. These monsters were not evil, they were just creatures defending their territory. On the fifth day, Lila was called to battle the champion of the arena, a legendary beast known as Garoth, the Wraith of Shadows. The entire arena was electric with thrill. As Lila prepared, she noticed the expressions on the faces of the crowd, some looked excited, while others showed fear for her safety. She took a moment to steady her breath. She couldn't let fear consume her. When Garoth appeared before her, he was even more imposing than she could have imagined. His form shifted between tangible and spectral, casting strange shadows that danced around the cage. For a moment, she felt fear grip her heart, but she reminded herself of her journey and how far she had come. The fight began, and Garoth lunged at her with incredible speed. Lila focused and moved instinctively, narrowly avoiding his sharp claws. She counterattacked with precision, using her knowledge of angles and timing. Instead of aiming to simply defeat Garoth, she tried to understand his movements, looking for a way to connect with the creature. As the battle raged on, Lila realized something: Garoth was not a monster to be feared. He was a creature trapped in the arena, forced to fight for the entertainment of others. It struck her that she could do something different. The crowd was expecting blood and glory, but Lila had other ideas. With determination, Lila managed to use her speed and agility to dodge Garoth's attacks without aiming to injure him. Finally, after a long battle of strength and precision, she caught the beast's attention. She gestured for him to stop, and miraculously, he did. The audience fell silent, unsure of what they were witnessing. In that moment, Lila spoke loudly for everyone to hear. She told the crowd that Garoth was not a monster, but a magnificent creature deserving of freedom. To her surprise, many in the audience started to chant for the same. The message spread like wildfire. They were tired of blood sport. The arena owner, seeing the shift in the crowd's mindset, slowly nodded, realizing that Lila was doing something remarkable. In an incredible twist of fate, he gestured for the gates to open. Lila and Garoth rushed out together, escaping into the wilds of Varanthia, leaving the stunned crowd behind. Lila had entered the arena as a mere competitor, but she emerged as a powerful force for change, not only for herself but for the creatures who had been wrongly labeled as monsters. It turned out that the scariest one was not Lila or Garoth, but the fear that motivated humanity to fight against what they did not understand. The spaceship shuddered, a low groan vibrating through its metal bones. Inside a cramped holding cell, Illyra flinched. She was small, barely 17, with eyes the color of a stormy sea and hair like spun moonlight. Around her, the air hung thick with the stench of ozone and something else, something ancient and foul. 3 creatures occupied the cell with her. They were Gorthaks, hulking beasts with skin like cracked obsidian and eyes that glowed with malevolent orange light. Their claws, longer than Illyra's arm, scraped against the metallic floor, a sound that sent shivers down her spine. They were the stuff of nightmares, creatures from the dark corners of the galaxy, beings whispered about in hushed tones by even the most seasoned space explorers. Illyra had read about them, studied their physiology, their savagery. Now, she was trapped with 3 of them. She had been captured during a routine survey mission on Xylos, a planet teeming with bizarre and dangerous life forms. Her team, a ragtag bunch of scientists and explorers, had been ambushed. Illyra, the youngest and seemingly the most vulnerable, had been chosen for something. They had locked her in this cage, with the Gorthaks. Their purpose was unclear, but it was undoubtedly sinister. The lead Gorthak, larger than its companions, let out a guttural roar that reverberated through the cell. Its orange eyes fixed on Illyra, assessing her, sizing her up. The other 2 Gorthaks mirrored its gaze, their movements slow and deliberate. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced Illyra. This was it. This was how she would die, not in glorious battle, but devoured by alien monsters. But Illyra was not your average 17-year-old. She was a prodigy, a genius in xenobiology, her mind sharper than any blade, her knowledge more potent than any weapon. While her teammates had focused on the physical aspects of alien life, Illyra had devoted herself to their minds. She had spent years studying the intricacies of alien communication, the subtle nuances of pheromones and bioelectrical signals. She knew more about these creatures than the entire human delegation combined. The Gorthaks, for all their brutish strength, were remarkably unsophisticated. Their communication was based on crude chemical signals, easily decipherable by Illyra's specialized equipment, now thankfully still clipped to her belt. She activated a small device, almost invisible against her jumpsuit. The device emitted a low hum, a specific frequency that resonated deep within the Gorthak's biology. The lead Gorthak flinched. Its glowing eyes dimmed slightly. It let out a whimper, a sound utterly unlike its previous roars. Illyra continued, adjusting the frequency, sending a carefully crafted message into their collective unconscious. A message of submission, of fear, not of her, but of something far, far greater. She painted a vivid picture of a cosmic horror, a being of unimaginable power, a being that would consume even the mighty Gorthaks without a second thought. The effects were instantaneous. The Gorthaks, initially hostile, became terrified. They huddled together, their claws retracted, their eyes wide with a fear deeper than Illyra had ever seen in any creature. The lead Gorthak trembled, its massive body shaking like a leaf in a storm. The fear wasn't manufactured, Illyra played on their instinctive survival mechanisms, exploiting their inbuilt weaknesses. The message wasn't a lie, she had researched beings of unimaginable power during her research, and had recorded the frequency ranges that induced fear. It was a clever manipulation of their biology. The fear was real, a visceral terror that gripped them completely. Hours passed. Illyra, in her small cell, watched the Gorthaks. Their terror didn't abate. They were utterly subjugated, their fear a palpable presence in the confined space. Illyra, the seemingly fragile girl, controlled them. She manipulated them, influencing them with a whisper of fear, a barely perceptible frequency that resonated within their primal being. The ship's doors hissed open. A squad of heavily armed human soldiers entered the cell, weapons trained on the Gorthaks. Their expressions changed, as they witnessed the display of terrified creatures. They saw Illyra, sitting calmly, her face pale but resolute. They saw not a prisoner, but a master. The soldiers, led by Captain Rex, a grizzled veteran with years of experience dealing with dangerous extraterrestrials, approached Illyra cautiously. "How?" he stammered, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. Illyra smiled faintly. "I understand them," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Better than they understand themselves." The ensuing interrogation was surprisingly brief. Illyra detailed her research, her methods. The captain listened, stunned into silence by her intellect, by her mastery over the seemingly invincible Gortax. Her knowledge was too dangerous to leave unchecked, to be buried in some obscure scientific paper. They took Illyra to a high-security facility, not as a prisoner, but as a vital asset, a weapon of unprecedented potential. The Gortax, still cowering in their cage, were forgotten. Illyra, the small, seemingly vulnerable girl, had proven herself to be the most terrifying creature in the entire ship, a predator of the mind, a master of fear. She was no longer a prisoner. She was the ultimate weapon. The humans had stumbled upon something far more dangerous and powerful than they initially thought, a mind capable of controlling the very essence of fear. And, in the vast, uncharted galaxy, fear was the ultimate power. In a distant future, on a planet named Galera, a small colony thrived amidst lush jungles and vibrant skies. The colony, however, lived in fear of a dark, twisted secret hidden from most of its citizens. Beneath the ground, there was a facility where they captured creatures from the wild, creatures that many called monsters. They were kept in cages, brutalized, and used for research. But unbeknownst to the people of Galera, one of these monsters was not what she seemed. Her name was Lyra. She was a young woman with striking silver hair and sharp emerald eyes. She had been captured after a terrible misunderstanding. The colony thought she was a monster because of her unusual appearance and her ability to tap into the energy of the world around her. In reality, she was one of the last of the ancient guardians, beings meant to protect the planet and its energy. In the facility, the sterile walls were filled with the sounds of growls and whimpers. Scientists observed the creatures from behind reinforced glass. They took notes, unaware of the true nature of the creatures they held, especially Lyra, who was trapped in a cage that had once held a terrifying beast. The other creatures in the facility were not the only ones scared. Lyra was frightened too. She spent her days listening to the cries of the monsters and her nights trying to find a way out. With every dawn, she focused her energy, slowly building her strength while the scientists argued about how to harness the powers they believed she possessed. One day a new scientist arrived. His name was Dr. Antoine, and he was unlike anyone else at the facility. Instead of treating the creatures with cruelty, he approached them with curiosity and compassion. He knew from ancient texts that some creatures might hold powers beyond comprehension, and when he saw Lyra in her cage, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was looking at something extraordinary. When he leaned closer to the cage, he noticed Lyra's piercing green eyes. They seemed to glow with a strange light. "What are you?" he whispered, not realizing the sound echoed in the silence of the room. "You're unlike anything I've ever seen." Lyra's heart raced. She had never spoken to a human before, let alone one who seemed kind. "I am not a monster," she finally replied, her voice soft yet strong. "You must understand, I am a guardian of this world. I was captured because they fear what they do not understand." Dr. Antoine was fascinated. Instead of calling for security, he sat on the ground before her cage. "Tell me more," he urged. "I think I can help you. But first, you must trust me." Lyra hesitated. Trust was hard for her. She had been betrayed too many times. But there was something in Dr. Antoine's eyes that made her feel safe. After a long pause, she nodded. "You must keep it a secret. If they find out, they will hurt you too." From that moment, a secret friendship blossomed. Dr. Antoine visited Lyra every day, bringing her small tokens of freedom: a flower from the jungle, a beautiful glowing stone, stories of the outside world. With each visit, Lyra shared her abilities and taught him about the energy of the planet and how to harness it. Meanwhile, the colony was growing restless. The monsters kept escaping their cages, creating chaos and fear. The leaders decided they needed to strengthen their security measures. They ordered more cages, more guards, unaware that the greatest threat was among them. One night, an alarm blared through the facility. The creatures had broken free, led by an enormous beast that stood tall with razor-sharp teeth and bright, furious eyes. Panic swept through the hallways as the scientists ran for safety. But Lyra knew this was her moment. She felt the energy build within her, ready to unleash. Dr. Antoine was trapped in the lab with Lyra's cage directly outside. Fear gripped his heart when he saw the indomitable beast charging toward him. Lyra instinctively called out, "Trust me." She tapped into her powers, and the energy surrounding her surged. A bright light exploded from her cage, illuminating the dark facility. The beast screeched to a halt, confused by the sudden brightness. Rather than attacking, it watched in awe as the once frightened young woman transformed into something magnificent. Her silver hair glowed, the energy swirling around her, creating a protective barrier. "You do not need to fear any longer," she declared, her voice steady and powerful. The creature, sensing her power, began to back down. It allowed the energy to calm its savage heart. The other monsters had been released, but instead of attacking, they followed their lead, warily tempted toward Lyra's brilliance. Dr. Antoine watched in astonishment as Lyra commanded the creatures, calming them with her energy. She wasn't just a guardian, she was their leader. "This is all your fault," the head scientist stormed toward her from the chaos. "All you had to do was remain a monster." Lyra's eyes flared. "I am not your monster," she proclaimed. "I am the protector of this world. It is you who have turned kindness into fear." She extended her hand, and in that moment, she freed the energy within her completely, creating a stunning barrier that protected all creatures around her. With her powers unleashed, Lyra turned the tables. The facility, once a place of oppression, transformed. The monsters rallied, not to attack, but to be free. They recognized their guardian, and in that powerful moment, they all shared a connection. Dr. Antoine stood mesmerized. He had never seen anything so beautiful. With bravery in his heart, he joined her side. "Let's go, all of you," he encouraged the creatures. "You are free." As the chaos faded and the villagers watched in shock, the doorway crumbled under the combined energy of Lyra and her newfound friends. The facility had become a memory, and standing amongst the ruins was not just a girl or monsters, but a tribe ready to embrace freedom together. In the end, Lyra was not just one of the monsters but the scariest of all. The villagers had underestimated her true power. Instead of fear, they would learn respect, for Lyra was Galera's true guardian. The world healed, and with it, they all found a new beginning together as one.